Same way that you ride a bike, you get on the bike and you pedal. You fall down, you get back on. You get back on the bike and you pedal. You don't go to a class and study biking for 3 years to learn how to ride a freaking bike. And you don't do that when you're doing a startup.
No.
You don't do that when you're joining some kind of something you're passionate about. You just go out and you start doing it. You start yelling and you go door to door and you say, this matters. It matters to me. It should matter to you. And yet we keep kind of looking back instead from an institutional standpoint and saying, well, how can we go and get formal training in order to start doing that? Or how can we get government assistance in order to start doing that? Or how do we create programs in schools to formalize a way of doing that? And when we start relying on these kind of organizations in order to be able to create or manufacture things like passion, I think that's where we fall down.
And we focus on the wrong things too. In the U.S. When I moved down to Silicon Valley in 2005, it was just right at the upswing of what was known at the time as Web 2.0. I guess it's been proclaimed dead now. It's down global era. But when I moved down there, I was just amazed. Like, nobody had any security net, no safety net, no training. People were just doing, and they were doing what they loved to do, and they were passionate about it, and they wanted to change their little part of the world. They wanted to make a better tool. They saw something wrong, and they wanted to fix it. If I was to profile, like I was just saying earlier that I hate profiling, this makes an entrepreneur, but if I was to profile what the type of person that I would meet, or people that took a look at something and said, yeah, I think there's a better way to do this, or why is it done this way? I think I can do a better way, and they did it. They just did it, and they didn't do it with a safety net. They didn't have healthcare behind them. Most of them didn't even have, I knew a lot of entrepreneurs back in 2005 before the market got really frothy that never brought in any money. They had to consult on the side, but they were doing something because they were passionate. And so, it's not necessarily like a whole bunch of money being thrown at it or some sort of change in attitude. I think it's not even that we're thinking of ourselves as number two, is we're cushy and comfy in Canada. We're cushy and comfy, and we don't want to lose that, right? It's to step outside, when we get more comfortable, to step outside of those bounds actually becomes more of a risk. So I'm not saying take away our healthcare or anything. Absolutely not. I love that. But perhaps there's some sort of attitude that we can instill in the Canadian population that it's okay to step out of that comfort zone. It's okay.
I think that's actually happening already. Many of you in the room I've spoken to and had the honor of chatting with, and everyone on this panel we've had tons of failures, right? I mean, we've had some modest success, we've also had a lot of failures. And I think Canada is now sort of realizing that failing gracefully and failing fast is actually a badge of honor. And that's really exciting. Yeah, failing gracefully.
Gracefully?
Yeah, I think you can fail gracefully. I do. I think part of it is well, you sort of tell yourself that your knee is bloody a little bit, but you get back on, you keep riding. But I think things are changing. I think now there is this culture that Canadians do want to start companies. They're okay to fail, and hopefully, I don't just want to talk about Shopify. I want to talk about all the companies that didn't go well, because I learned a ton from those companies.
And that's fantastic. And what we're seeing is a lot of Canadians starting to engage more and more with experiential opportunities like startup weekends. I think many of you here are involved with startup weekends. We just had one here in Ottawa. And startup drinks as well, to kind of create that entrepreneurial experience and bring together the community. My question though is that a lot of youth today, they are in education systems and they are
first week of school at McGill, and I knew that somebody had to be making these, and I thought I can do a better job of that. So I think the fact that you have access to first of all, to classmates, which you can test your, you can test your idea. I think the fact that you have access to professors that can be sort of your informal board of directors. I think the fact that you can get yourself recognized in the school newspaper. I think starting a business as a student is amazing. And again, if it doesn't work out, well, you can start it over. You can start another business, or just study harder. So I think actually starting a business as a student is actually fantastic. I went through a law degree and an MBA, and constantly, concurrently, had businesses. It was a huge competitive advantage for me doing that.
I think schools are making communities, and I think one of the ways we can leverage universities and colleges is by their alumni network. A lot of these people go on, they create companies, they would be the perfect mentors to the up-and-coming generations that are coming through the school, and they have a sense of community. They want to give back to their schools. A lot of people feel very strongly about their alma mater, and Harley was showing me the campus when we got here. He was proud of coming here for his MBA. You know, you can want to give back, and if we created conduits between the people who have graduated and gone on to do things and can mentor people who have ideas inside the school, I think that'd be a really powerful thing.
Yeah, in fact, I think don't misunderstand what I said earlier. I think universities are critical to growth and creating hotspots of very talented people. Talented people are drawn to universities, and in fact, I would argue that Silicon Valley was built on the back of Berkeley and Caltech and Stanford. That's why it became big, was because the smartest people in the world were going there to solve technical problems, and companies all built around them. I have the feeling that here we tend to sprinkle a bunch all over the country, so we don't, but if you look at Waterloo, it's very much developing around the quality of the programs that are there. People think that it's RIM, but if you go down and talk to startups, they say, they're not RIM and BlackBerry, they're not hiring people, they're not acquiring their backyard, but there's all these talent, this talent that's coming out of the school right here, we can build a lot of things. So, I think we would be, it'd be inappropriate for us to try to create entrepreneurship programs, entrepreneurship tracks, try to teach kids entrepreneurship. Like that's not the point.
It's more organic than that.
Exactly, it's more organic, it's a cultural thing, is to buy things off there. But instead, we buy from Walmart, we buy from, these large, non-Canadian mostly stores. And so we don't even as a culture support startups. We don't support.
So how do we change that? Just to segue to this topic of the entrepreneurial culture. I mean, if we go why in terms of some of our broken systems, whether it's a entrepreneurial ecosystem that's full of fragmented, siloed institutions that exist for the sake of existence in some cases. And if we're looking at some of the key challenges that we've all been discussing over the last year in building Startup Canada, how do we foster that entrepreneurial culture nationwide that permeates all of society in a mainstream way? How do we do that?
I think you have to make it sexy.
Is that the second time you've said sex?
I think so, yeah.
If I don't do it 3 times, I don't get sponsorships. I'm bringing sexy back. Oh, I have to pay royalties now, don't I? I really think that entrepreneurship in the past, as was pointed out in the opening remarks, has been, if you can't get a job, you start a business. I think entrepreneurship should be, for the people who have that passion and that drive that the other panelists were talking about, should be fostered and celebrated in the coolest way. And I think, things as simple, what is with that? As simple as being in a student newspaper is like, wow, I'm kind of doing something really cool, and people like it.
It's validation, right?
It's
You move
validation.
forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's vanity. No, absolutely. I mean, none of us here have egos, don't worry. So I know that's true. But I think that just positioning it as entrepreneurship is something that is great. And yes, owning your own business and being your own boss is a really powerful thing. But the lifestyle that comes with that, after you've almost burnt yourself out and then sold it, I think is something that you can't get any other way than winning the lottery or becoming an entrepreneur. And that's my position on it.
So I'm gonna be a little bit of a, I don't mean to, you guys are all brilliant, but I wanna say that I don't think we should necessarily be creating entrepreneurs for entrepreneurial sake. Like I said earlier, I think great entrepreneurs come from asking a question. They take a look at something and say, this is broken, or I don't think this is the best way to do it. And then they say, oh, I think I have a new way to do it, and they do something about it. I don't want to say, okay, just all of our kids go and be entrepreneurs, go learn entrepreneurialism, go start a business. Because I don't know if that is, I don't think that's the answer.
You can encourage those kids that are already entrepreneurial. You can give